Hey, it's Jeremy from OpticHouse.com. So you'll have to pardon me if I've told this story before. I don't think I have, but if I've mentioned it in YouTube videos before, bear with me. When I've wanted to make comics ever since I was in junior high. That's when I first started reading them, and almost immediately I started drawing my own comics, drawing either my versions of different superhero characters, drawing my, making up stories about Wolverine or the X-Men and me drawing my own version of them, or starting to make up my own characters already, pretending they existed in the DC universe or the Marvel universe. So it's something I've just always wanted to do. That's a big reason for all the videos I've been sharing and talking about this process, that passion and love that I've had since I was a kid, all the way up till now as an adult. But there was a time when I gave up on the dream of making comics or trying to do it for some sort of, to do it for a living or just even really producing anything on a regular basis. I'm sorry if I sound super dour. It's really not. I think it's just late and I'm tired. It's not a sad story. It has a happy ending. The happy ending is you're watching me make comics now. So, surprise. Happy ending. I got a little bit of experience publishing comics when I joined up with a comic studio, a comic art studio, back when I was in high school. I was one of the younger guys in there. But, me and one of my close friends and I, he was a writing partner I worked with, and I was the artist. We had a few short stories there, and then I also collaborated with a few other writers. And, I was happy to get the experience to do it, but I still felt like I had a lot to learn. In college, I went off to school. I was lucky enough to go to a high school that had AP studio art classes, so I think it gave me a little bit more confidence in terms of my skill set, just in terms of being at an area where I was, at least one class where I was surrounded by a lot of talented artists, and we're all kind of pushing each other, and we were competitive in a positive and friendly way, but, still trying to push each other to learn and to grow. When I went off to college, I used my AP Studio Art portfolio to apply for the Fine Art School. And oddly enough, I got accepted into the Fine Art program before I actually got my acceptance letter into college. But I went into, four-year university as an art major. And once I got into college, the program I was at was a lot more geared towards the fine art gallery scene as opposed to really being geared towards illustration. They didn't really have an illustration program. They had a fine art program and they had a design program. After being in college for, I think after my freshman year and partway through my sophomore year, I started thinking about what life was going to be like after college. I was already thinking about that because, going into the fine art world, there's very few people who are actually making a living as artists in the gallery system. Or at least at this point, back in the late 90s, there were maybe, there's lots of art galleries in LA. But when you think about the type of work that people do, like there's a lot of galleries, but there's galleries that represent just photographers. And of all those photographers, only a few are really making their living doing that full time. Of the sculpture galleries, there's lots of artists that create art that gets shown in galleries, but still not a lot of people making a full-time living out of it. And I started running the numbers. In my head, I remember actually walking to painting class one morning, probably my sophomore year, and I was thinking about, let's say that there's 100 monthly books coming out from Marvel, 100 monthly books coming out from DC. And then let's say that you take Dark Horse, Image, and all the other indie creators and put those all together and say that there's like maybe 300 titles per month coming out from that. Now this was right towards the late 90s, so it was on the downside of the Marvel, not the Marvel, I shouldn't blame them all on Marvel. It was on the downside of the comics balloon, the comics industry bubble, where the comic industry imploded a bit in the late 90s. After having such a massive expansion, a lot of companies went out of business. Let's say that the entire comic industry, which I think these numbers would probably be generous, But let's say that the entire comic industry in the late 90s could have been summed up into 500 monthly comics. I started saying, all right, well, that would be, let's say, that's 500 positions for pencilers, 500 positions for inkers, 500 positions for colorists, 500 positions for letterers, 500 positions for writers. Now, that doesn't include artists that pencil and ink their own work, inkers who do more than one title a month, writers who write multiple titles per month, letterers who are lettering like an entire line of comics, letterers and colorists doing both those. So, to say that the entire industry, the job market, could be summed up into 2,500 jobs, that's a tiny job market. And I was thinking, wow, I think I looked at how, I was as an artist and saying, or I guess what I should say is where my skill set was as an artist at the time. And I just thought, it's such a small job market. How is it that I'm going to find my way into a job here? So I started saying, all right, well, maybe I'm not going to get to make comics. Maybe I need to do something else. I started taking classes in the animation department and studying animation. I thought I would probably end up becoming an animator. Well, it turned out, even though, the school I went to didn't have they had a graduate animation program, but not an undergrad animation program. But I was still allowed to take classes in the animation program, so I took the classes I could, learned as much as I could, and went out into the job world when I graduated. Turns out I ended up working in graphic design because even finding work in animation is very difficult and still continues to be difficult. I know a lot of people that are struggling to break into the animation world. So, even though it's a field that uses a lot more artists than, say, the comic book industry, it's still a very challenging competitive job market. But, my love for comics never went away. I didn't read as many as I did in high school, but I continued to, and to this day still do read comics. But I think somewhere in my probably late 20s, when I was out of school, I still had ideas that I wanted to do for comic books. And I decided that I was still going to do one. And the difference this time was that I wasn't concerned about having a job, and it wasn't about finding a place in the job market. This was before webcomics became really popular, but I had already learned like a little bit of basic HTML from my graphic design jobs and doing a little bit of web design. And I realized I could just make comics and put them online. I had done kind of a similar thing doing animation. When I had taken my interest in animation, I learned how to use the program Flash pretty well. And I had made a few animated shorts that I uploaded to online websites. And just the fact that I was getting feedback from people that they were enjoying these little stupid cartoons that I was making, I was like, wow. And I shouldn't call them stupid because the people that actually liked them didn't think they were stupid. And the fact that I took the time to do them means I didn't think they were stupid. I still see them as very, very raw pieces of my artwork in terms of my creative development. But the fact that I had feedback from people who saw my work and were entertained by it, that was the gratification. That was really why I made it art, and that was all I needed in order to keep doing it. Now, the downside is that anyone who has done any animation work knows animation is extremely labor intensive. I would say more so than comics. And I realized that I made a 3-part animated short that took me over the course of like a year and a half probably to produce. And in the time that I did that, I could have done this animated short was like the first chapter and idea that I had for a comic book. And in the time that I did it, I could have done an entire like 4-issue miniseries. So I shifted gears. I decided I'm going to go back and I'm going to make comics. And I'm making them because I want to tell these stories. And along the way, I'd been writing and rewriting the story that ended up becoming Eye of the Gods. And I had been working in the toy industry for a while, both as a packaging designer and, I think I had can't remember if I had slowly started moving into product yet, but it's when I became friends with my buddy Carl Altstetter, and he saw some of the stuff that I had started doing, and he asked me what my plans were for distributing it. And I said, well, you know what, I'm just going to put it out online. And he, as somebody who had run his own comic book publishing company, was like, you know, if you have a story and you feel that it's worthwhile and your art's good enough, it's like you can publish it yourself. And he showed me, you know, how you go about sending a book to Diamond and, you know, contacting retailers and sending advance copies and reaching out to people and trying to get your book into comic shops. And from there, that really started my journey in terms of self-publishing. Now, since that time, there have been so many more avenues with Comixology in terms of being able to put comics out digitally, being able to do print-on-demand comics so you can actually do stuff at an affordable cost without doing a massive print run. And, you know, there's just so many more venues now for someone who's creative to get their work out. I mean, just the fact that I'm sharing videos of me making comics online with you, this is a testament to it. So, you know, I walked away from comics because I just thought the job market itself was too small. But I stopped looking at the job market per se and decided I want to make comics just because I love it. And I just couldn't turn away from it. And here we are. And I'm still making comics. That's it for now. Check out my website, optichouse.com. If you enjoy these videos, please share them. Also, sign up for my weekly newsletter to get a free digital download and see what else I'm working on. Go be creative.